Welcome to episode 142 of the Loane Hockey Podcast. Where today we're going to be talking about some standouts from last night's matchup between Team CHL and Team USA, which is the NTDP U18s. And so it was a really cool matchup to have those two teams face off for the first time. I felt like it was a really competitive matchup for the CHL. It was a really dominating effort from them. They ended up winning the game 6-1. And I believe tonight they're playing in Oshawa, so it's a two-game series, and it was a really fun game to watch. I felt like so many of those CHL prospects showed a lot of skill, a lot of flair, and really talented group of not only forwards but defensemen. And then their goaltending was really good from Josh Ravensbergen, and just all around very dominant effort from them. And we'll start with some efforts up front from them there. I felt like one of the guys I wanted to talk about was Lyndon Lakovic, just a big center slash winger who can drive the outside lane really well. He's a guy who handles contact really well. And I was really impressed with his shooting ability. I felt like yesterday he was shooting the puck with volume, he was shooting the puck with pace, and he was shooting the puck with a lot of purpose. And he had a goal where he just sniped it yesterday, and it was a really well executed shot off the placement on his stick and also his ability to shoot with power and prowess. And Lakovic looked really good. I was really impressed with his play. I really liked his play as well. Porter Martone, a guy who I haven't seen too much, but when I watched him yesterday, and I was remarkably impressed with him. And I was a big fan of James Higgins to start the season. I still am to this day, but I'm starting to wonder a little bit more if Porter Martone could actually challenge Higgins for that first overall spot. Because, and you look at Martone's game, natural leader. He's already captain of his draft eligible team. And he's a guy who plays an all around game. He's strong on his feet. Yes, his straight line speed's a little awkward, but he can still fill out and also he can still fix power skating. Power skating is something that you can mechanically fix in future seasons. So for him, but he has the hockey sense. He has the speed. He has the net driving ability. He has the dual threat play. He can shoot and he can dish. He can do everything. Like I was remarkably impressed, and I wasn't just impressed with him. I was just remarkably impressed at his all around ability. I didn't know how good he was until I saw him yesterday. I was like, wow, this guy, off the charts skill, off the charts physicality, just an all around playmaker who can drive physicality, drive tenacity, and just be involved in every single situation for his team. I feel like that's a guy you want as a first overall pick, potential first overall pick. And it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. And I still like Higgins a lot. I just feel like Martone's a guy who brings a little bit more of everything and a little bit more polished in that sense as well. But he was really impressive. I was really impressed with his ability to drive hard areas because he's not afraid of any player whatsoever. He's like a Matthew Tkachuk in that sense or a Brady Tkachuk, and how he's able to drive the net. He's not afraid of anybody. He's not afraid of having that physical edge. He's annoying to play against. Just brings everything, and he's been really impressive this season. He's on pace for around 140 points in the OHL. Unbelievable. He played unbelievable last night. I'm really excited to watch him again today. I feel like there's just a lot more that he can bring in this game. And Malcolm Spence, I thought was really good in this game as well. I noticed the checking ability. I always notice him at international level of play. He always stands out there and he always makes a quick adaptation. I don't know what it is with him, but he always makes a quick adaptation to international play. He did it at the U18s. He's done it previously at the Linka, and I'm not surprised he's done it in the series thus far. I feel like he's just been a really good fit for international style play with the style of player he is. Physical, two-way player. He's more of a shutdown player than he is offense based, but I feel like his offense is slightly underrated in that sense because he brings a really good scoring touch. He brings really good instincts around the crease. Just he's more relied upon as a defensive winger sometimes. That's not a bad thing. It's just more a testament to how he can play both ends of the ice. And I feel like he's going to be a guy who should go inside minimum the top 15. I could see him going inside the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And Cameron Schmidt, another guy I was really impressed with yesterday. I always noticed him. I've noticed him a lot, and I like his ability to generate speed off the rush. He reminds me of Jagger Firkus, who's the Seattle draft pick and was drafted a couple years prior, I believe in the second round. And Firkus had a little bit more slick ability in his maneuvering and neutral zone play. Schmidt's a guy who just goes. He goes full speed, got really good stride extension. He's got power in his stride to propel him off the rush, propel him through the outside lane, be able to blow past defenders with ease. A guy who really leverages that straight line ability to attack the heels of defenders really seamlessly. And similar to Martone in that sense, he plays with almost no fear. And he's always driving the play. He's always looking to drive the bus offensively, even as a winger, because sometimes being a play driver as a winger is a little bit more of a challenge if you're trying to drive your own individual line, because usually that's the center's job. But with Schmidt, he's a winger. He's a play driver. He's arguably, and yesterday was arguably the best play driver on his line. I felt like the line he was on, he was playing right wing, and he was just consistent at being able to generate rushes, generate with speed, and being able to get in the O zone with pace. And I feel like that's a big emphasis in transition game is being able to just exit the D zone and get to the O zone as soon as possible. And Schmidt was able to do that yesterday. His off rush play was fantastic. He was just fun to watch, really fun to watch with that speed and that tempo that he has and brings. I'm not going to be surprised if he falls in the draft because of his height, but I really believe this guy should be in the top five, not top five, top 15 conversation because I feel like he's that good and he's just that noticeable. And Caleb Denoye, another guy I really liked yesterday. I felt like with Denoye, he's a really skilled center. He plays sometimes like he has ice in his veins. He's so calm and composed with the puck, especially handling through neutral zone rushes and being able to handle through the middle lane. I feel like with Denoye, he's really good at managing the pace and tempo at lower speeds and lower gears, which allows him to be able to slow the play down instinctively and be able to manage the tempo, manage the game in his favor, which gives him a distinct advantage in that sense. Really skilled as a passer and as a playmaker. He can pass through sticks, he can pass through feet. He's really skilled at being able to have accuracy and coordination in his passing ability. And I was really impressed with his ability to utilize that yesterday. I've been impressed watching him previously as well, not only in playing junior but also international play. And I just feel like he was really good and a noticeable player. Justin Carbonell from the Q was a guy who was noticeable in this game. Speed, off rush play, his ability to handle pucks through contact, avoid contact, use a little bit of escapability in his feet, and he's really noticeable in that sense. So really slick winger who can play and drive play as a dual threat player. And he's more of a scorer sometimes than he is a playmaker, but I feel like he brings a little bit of both to the table and he's really noticeable when it comes to those things. And then defensively, Tyshawn Atchison from Barry in the OHL was really noticeable yesterday. I felt like what's really noticeable about him is he's got a physical edge to him. So that physical edge allows him to be able to control play in a sense where he's not going to allow guys through him easily. Like some guys won't provide that physicality and then they just get run over or they get blown past off the rush or something like that. But Atchison's a guy who, if you're trying to go through him, you're going to get hit. And he did that a lot yesterday. And he's not afraid of physicality. He's not afraid of standing up the line. He's got that physical edge and that tenacity to be able to shut plays down, which allows him to be a play driver in that sense defensively, defending entries and also defending line rush. And I like his tempo with the puck. I felt like he was moving pucks, he was zipping pucks fast, he was controlling play up ice, controlling transitions. His power play breakouts were well executed. I felt like there's good patterning there and just was noticeable all around. I felt like he played a really good game. Took a couple penalties, but I felt like that physical edge is just natural out of him. And sometimes players either have that or they don't. And Atchison's a guy who just naturally has it and just instinctively uses that every shift. The Matthew Schaefer, I felt like there's nothing really else that needs to be said about him. We've known about him for quite some time. You've heard about him internationally for quite some time. You've heard about him in the OHL for quite some time. And he was a first overall pick in the O. So Schaefer's a guy, yesterday he scored a beautiful rush goal and the end goal where he just blew past everybody in the neutral zone and just maneuvered around one of USA's defensemen in route to the net. It was just a beautiful sequence, beautiful goal, and highlight reel goal that's probably online somewhere, probably all over the internet. But Schaefer's a guy, standout two-way defenseman who can play both sides of the puck, really composed, and he's really skilled as a defensive player. and also really skilled as an offensive player. I feel like he controls the line really well. He walks the line. He adds pace to his playmaking, and he has a maturity to his game in his puck handling, possession driving ability, and his decision making that allows him to play like he's a 20-year-old player playing in the OHL, and he's 18. And he's been remarkably impressive. He started the season with an injury, but ever since coming back from that, he's just been very consistent for them, and he looked really good. And was really impressed with him. And then Blake Fiddler from Edmonton in the WHL, who almost actually could have played for the NTDP team. Instead, he opted to go to the WHL. And Fiddler looked good. I like his movement. I like his crossovers. I like his backwards footwork and how he's able to backpedal. I really like the range of motion he gets with his feet to be able to control ice and cover ice with a little bit more efficiency than other defensemen. And he's really, really skilled at being able to play on top of the ice with his feet. I feel like he doesn't dig his ice or doesn't dig his edges too much into the ice, and he's really in control of his feet, how he moves them, and how he's able to execute with his crossovers and pivots and footwork in general. And he's really skilled with his feet. But in terms of breakout decisions and behind the net decisions, I thought he was also noticeable. He was noticeable sometimes when he was able to reverse to his partner in a breakout, or there were times where you need to outlet pass under pressure, and you do that fine. And he doesn't play a flashy game. He plays a composed game, and he plays a defensive oriented game. But a guy who plays with that steadiness in transition and can carry the puck when necessary and brings a little bit of modern day attributes in a defenseman that you'd like. I'm curious to see where he goes in the draft. I don't necessarily envision him being a first round pick, but I could totally see that happening. And I could totally see a situation where he pops off offensively, say, as soon as next year. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I could totally see him going in the first round. I could totally see him going in the second or the third. So it's really dependent on what teams want and how he fits their system. So, but Fiddler's definitely an intriguing player. I talked about him on my podcast previously in terms of the details of his game and how he's able to play not only defensively but offensively. I did that briefly, and I'm a fan of his game. I do like his game. I just feel like there's a little bit more layering that needs to be added in order for him to be an NHL defenseman, like his dad was as a forward in the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, and then continues to benefit him in the future. And then Josh Ravensbergen in goal for the team CHL from Prince George in the WHL was just really, really on it in terms of glove side, being able to angle the plays off, being able to come off his post and come to the middle of the crease. In terms of his angles, he was holding his glove well, he was holding his blocker well. I felt like he was controlling rebounds well and controlling them to the corner and managing the pace of tempo and shots really well. I felt like he was really in control of the game for almost all of it and just played really well throughout a lot of this game. And I was really impressed with him. I didn't, again, not a player who I haven't seen too much of, and I was really impressed watching for the first time. And I really like his foundation in terms of the mechanics within his feet and also his fundamentals within his upper body to make saves. And it'll be interesting to see how he continues to progress future as well. And then for Team USA, they added two players. They added Ben Cavon and they added Matthew Lansing because of injuries. So Ben Cavon and Lansing were both up in this game. I thought those two guys were standouts. And I noticed Lansing a little bit more than Cavon in terms of the physical edge. But Cavon's got a shot. He's got a hell of a shot on him. He's got the ability to shoot to score and not just shoot to shoot. And he's a natural scorer. He's got that natural instinct to be able to score. So I was really impressed with him. I was really impressed with his ability to shoot and shoot under pressure and be able to curl and drag in shots. And then Lansing, I felt like was good in being able to use his physicality, use his two-way play. Not an offensively flashy center, but he dishes the puck really well when he can and controls pace, controls possession with the puck as a passer under pressure really well. And then as for some other players in terms of the NTP, I felt like Conrad Fondrich stayed out a little bit more defensively than I would have liked offensively. I was a little bit more excited to watch him offensively in this game. I didn't notice a ton of that, but his defensive play was noticeable. I felt like his positioning was noticeable. He's in PK situations, late game, those type of situations to be able to kill plays and get pucks out of the zone. So he was a notable player in that sense. But Jacob Fasnica was really good right winger. He's committed to University of Minnesota and just plays with pace, plays with an edge in transition. Very physical around the net, very physical in one-on-one battles, and not afraid to hit guys, not afraid to get inside position of guys and take a risk to be able to try and get the puck and try to work it free. So he was really good. I felt like he was one of their bright spots, even though they didn't score too much this game. I felt like he was really good all around. And also defensively, that's always been one of the stronger parts of his game is his defensive foundation, his positioning, even as a winger. And so because he's got the speed to close and the gap control to close, the stick work, and the anticipation in D zone, he's hard to play against because he's like a gnat. He's all over you, and that speed element allows him to close gaps quickly in D zone situations. And Vasnikov, the rush was just I wouldn't say dynamic, but it was borderline dynamic because of not necessarily the skill, but how he's managing the pace of his game. He's just fast. He just goes. And with the puck on his stick, he's hard to stop. And players who are playing at that pace at tempo with the puck on their stick are hard to stop. So he was noticeable. I was really impressed with him. Cole McKinney, another guy I actually really liked, and I followed his game for quite some time. I feel like McKinney in terms of his game has really improved as a power skater and has really improved with his stride recovery and has really improved that in straight line. I feel like McKay stood out offensively in forechecking this game and being able to make plays, being able to play in the power play, maneuvering along the flanks, and being able to control space in that way. I felt like he was really good and really noticeable as a all-around playmaker in that sense. Will Moore, who arguably to me was the best USA player in this game, that could be a discussion, but I would argue that he was the best USA player in this game, just all around perspective, because William Moore, he reminds me a little bit of Cutter Gauthier in the sense where he brings a little bit of everything. He's got that power game, he's got that skill game in tandem with each other. He's got really good release, but also really good passing ability and the ability to make small area plays. And he's actually committed to Boston College as well, so kind of fits that style system. But in terms of Moore's game, I was impressed with his ability to move off the puck and find space off the puck, how he's able to generate that and be able to maneuver into space. And he was really good with his off puck play in this game. I felt like that was noticeable. And like I said, William Moore really resembles a lot of Cutter Gauthier to me. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes in the draft. I really like him as a potential top 10 player. I don't know if that's something that's possible for him, but I like him as a top 10 player. That's just my personal perspective. I feel like he's good enough to be a top 10 player, and if not, at worst, top 15. So a guy who plays really well, and he played really well yesterday. Jack Murtaugh, I was really impressed with him as well yesterday. He reminds me a little bit of Teddy Stiga, who's playing at BC right now. He's a national draft pick. He's got that pace, that tenacity, that physical edge, that speed, and above average offensive skill with a defensive foundation. So he can play in transition. He can play off the rush. He can play in D zone situations and just play a lot of different situations for his team that are crucial and necessary. And I felt like he was good all across the board in that sense as well. Jake Stewart, I noticed a little bit in terms of physical edge and the ability to do that and provide that on a regular basis. And I felt like outside of that, I didn't notice him too much. And actually, let me go back to Team CHL before I forget quickly. There was one more standout I didn't get to is Michael Misa, who of course, is a potential top five pick in this draft. I noticed him a lot offensively. I noticed him a lot in transition. I noticed him at being able to create rushes individually with speed, with pace, with flair. And he plays a really good skill game, and he's really popped off this season. And I'm really glad to see that from him because he's had a few good seasons without a doubt in the OHL, especially for a 15 and 16-year-old. But it's just you're kind of looking for that moment where it's like, where is he going to really pop off? And he's really popped off this year. He's averaging 2 points a game right now in the O, and has just played very consistent hockey out there offensively. So Michael Misa was excellent yesterday. So I'm excited to see how he does again tonight and how he's able to potentially continue to create offense as well. And then back to USA now. So Asher Burnett, who's committed to Michigan, left shot defenseman. Again, another player I've followed for quite some time now, ever since his U14 year. I love Barnett's game. I like the foundation in his game. I like his puck movement. He's always had that composure to his game to be able to make composed plays, but also make smart plays. So being able to simultaneously make both, and just a really skilled defenseman defensively, controlling rushes against and being able to use his reads first rather than his stick and physicality to be able to shut plays down. So he plays a little bit more efficient defense in a modern perspective. And one of my favorite defensemen, actually, who was playing this game, Donnie Bracco, left shot D, committed to Harvard. I feel like Donnie Bracco is really, really underrated. I could just see him being a guy that ends up as like a fourth round pick to Carolina and he just pops off next year or pops off in 2 years' time. I just feel like Bracco's a guy who he really stands out as a player who utilizes and understands the details so well within his game, within spacing, how to pivot away from pressure, how to get out of situations with the puck, how to find space in his routes, how to move off the puck with purpose. I feel like a lot of it is integrated in his hockey sense and why I like him so much. And when he defends, he's surfing, he's angling guys, he's using his footwork to cut ice in half and he's using his stick to position himself to be able to cut ice in half in that regard as well. Just a really smart defenseman, a really underrated defenseman, and I really like watching his game. I'm a really big fan of his game. I feel like there's a lot more in store for him heading into the future, and a really skilled defenseman, two-way defenseman. I feel like he's really, really, really underrated, and I really enjoy watching him. And then I thought from a goalie perspective, Patrick Quinlan was actually pretty good in this game. I felt like he was controlling depth to his crease really well. He looked composed and he wasn't afraid to challenge plays. He almost got injured in the game, but I was a really big fan of his ability to play with that depth, play with that additional depth to be able to get to the top of the crease when necessary, but also know when to stay back and know when to cover and know when to angle plays off. And I felt like he had some good reads, and obviously he wasn't getting much help defensively, but in terms of his play individually, I thought he did a really good job, and I thought he was really noticeable all around at being able to make saves consistently, and being able to shut plays down in that sense as well. So really good game from Quinlan in this game.